Okay. Waiting for YouTube Live to turn on. All right, so this problem is asking us to find the domain algebraically. So to find it, we are going to first interchange the x's and the y's. This is like your, whoops, this is like your y right here. And these are your x's over here. So everywhere I see an x, I'm gonna make it a y, and everywhere I see a y, I'm gonna make it an x. So my equation is gonna be x equals y over y squared minus 10y. So this one's a little bit harder to solve, actually a lot harder to solve, because I've got a lot of y's here, and I'm trying to solve it just for one y. So to do that, I'm going to first multiply this over to this side. So I'll get x times y squared minus 10y equals y. You follow what I did there?
Yeah.
Now I'm going to see, I'm trying to get y's by themselves. So now I'm going to distribute the x in, x y squared minus 10y, and I'm going to subtract, sorry, 10yx, and I'm going to subtract the y at the same time. Okay. Find the domain of the, oh, I'm so sorry. Thank God. I'm doing this wrong. I'm like, shoot, this is a tough problem. No, they didn't want me to find the interval. My bad. They wanted me to find the domain of the function. Yeah, this is that was beyond the scope. Finding the inverse of that function is tricky. They wanted me to find the domain of the function algebraically. Well, the domain of a function is when you have a rational function like this, you can't divide by 0. So all I have to do is all I have to do is say that x squared minus 10x, that's the denominator, right? Cannot equal 0. So let's solve it for when it does equal 0. When does x squared minus 10x equal 0? Well, to solve this, I'm going to factor an x out. Do you see what I did there?
Yeah.
And then you remember the zero product property?
Not really.
The zero product property says, hey, if I have a times b equals 0, the only way I can get a times b to equal 0 is either a has to equal 0 or b has to equal 0. So whenever I have a product, see how this is a product, this times this equals 0, I use the zero product property and I say, well, that means that either x equals 0 or x minus 10 equals 0. In which case, x equals 0 or x equals 10. So what's the domain? The domain is all real numbers except 0 and 10. Now I want to write that in interval notation. So how do I write all real numbers except 0 and 10?
Wouldn't it be negative infinity to 0 and then union symbol?
Perfect.
0 to 10.
Perfect.
Union symbol 10 to infinity.
Perfect. And just make sure you're putting the parentheses, the open parentheses in there. Yep. Good job. Excellent. Next one, let's whip through these real quick here. We've got about 5 minutes left. Find the domain of the function algebraically and support your answer graphically. So same deal. Actually, there's two no-nos here. This right here can't equal 0, right? But also this inside here, what do we know when we have a square root of something? What has to be true about what's inside there? Do you remember?
I do not.
So when you have a square root of something, You can't take the square root of a negative number in the real number system. So we're going to have two different things going on here. First of all, we're going to say, well, the denominator there, x plus 5 and x squared plus 1, cannot equal 0. That denominator can't equal 0. But also we're going to say, and what's inside the parentheses here, or inside the radical, has to be greater than or equal to 0. Because you can't take the square root of a negative number. So we're going to solve both of those things. Let's solve the blue one first. So to solve the blue one, the easiest way is just to add x to both sides. So we know that x has to be less than or equal to 8. So that's one thing we know. And now let's do the red thing. What was the zero product property again? What can I do? See how I've got this times this equals 0? Either this equals 0. So x plus 5 can't equal 0, and x squared plus 1 can't equal 0. This means x can't equal negative 5. And this means x squared can't equal negative 1. Is x squared ever going to equal negative 1?
No.
No, so that actually doesn't even matter, because that's no matter what I have, no matter what value I have for x there, when I square it, it's going to become a positive. So I don't ever have to worry about that happening. So I can just say, see ya. So here are the two things I know. I know that x, I'm going to draw this on a number line. I know that x cannot equal negative 5. So that has to be an open circle there. And I also know that x has to be less than or equal to 8. So here's positive 8. So it has to be less than or equal to positive 8. So basically, that's my answer. It's everything less than or equal to 8, but it doesn't include negative 5. Okay, so how do I write that?
Negative infinity to negative 5 not included, or
Correct, not included.
and then
Union.
Yeah, and negative 5 to 8.
Perfect. Included or not?
Not.
Yes with the 8. Because of that equal to sign there. See how it's a so you do include the 8. You don't include the negative 5.
Okay.
Now it said support your answer graphically. So I think maybe what they want you to do is like actually plug that into your graphing calculator maybe, and then just look at it and be like, oh yeah, it's not defined at negative 5, and it's not defined to the right of 8. Maybe, I don't know for sure, to be honest, but I think that's what they mean by that. Let's check out. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right, let's see if we can do probably one more. Find the domain of the function. So remember what I just talked about. What has to be true about what's inside the square root? What has to be true about x minus 9? What does it have to be?
It can't equal 0.
Well, it can equal 0. It can't be smaller than 0. So that has to be greater than or equal to 0. Got it?
Yeah.
So that means x has to be greater than or equal to 9. And how do I write that?
In terms of like the domain?
Yeah, which one of those, A, B, C, or D, is the way to write that, or is correct?
Wouldn't it be D?
Exactly. And so look, this is that graph, Micah. This is starting here at 9 and it's going to the right. Do you understand how that's the domain? The domain is greater than or equal to 9.
Yeah.
That's how you would graphically show this one. Number 17, it's kind of harder to show that, because that's a tougher thing to just, graph like really quickly. I don't even know if you actually done that yet. So I think what they mean by supporting it graphically, they probably meant just punch it in your graphic calculator.
Yeah. Normally when it asked us to like support it graphically, there would be like a graphing question next, but there wasn't one on that question.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a little bit too difficult. All right, find the domain of this. All right, here's a good one. So this has two taboos, right? This thing down here can't be equal to 0. But also x plus 6 has to be greater than or equal to 0. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to say, I'm going to get rid of this equal to part down here. Because after all, that's how it would be equal to 0.
Mm.
Right? So let's just get rid of, let's just say that x plus 6 has to be greater than 0. And let's not put the equal to part in there, because the equal to part would give you 0 in the denominator, which is a no-no. So what does x have to be? Greater than, solve that equation.
Greater than 0 or -6, sorry.
Negative, yep, -6. And which one of those is that, A, B, C, or D?
Is it B?
That's right, because it doesn't have the equal to sign with it. Good job. All right.